Have at it. Take it away.
Okay, well, good evening to everyone, those joining us live, as well as those who will be watching the recording and joining us on social media. Thank you so much for being a part of our Dining Out Safely in Philadelphia conversation. My name is Jonathan Lovitz. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm a Center City resident and community advocate who is thrilled to be here with some incredible experts talking about I think the ins and outs of returning as best we can to dining out safely and what it means for all of us as consumers and supporters of our economy here in Philadelphia and across the Commonwealth. We have some extraordinary special guests with us here, but it's also supposed to be an open dialogue. We want to answer all the questions we can while we've got these folks with us. So allow me to first welcome Ben and Zach from PRLA. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about who you are and PRLA, so folks know your extraordinary expertise?
Sure, thanks so much. I'm Ben Fileccia. I'm the Senior Director of Operations for the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association. The PRLA has been around for a long time, and we are the advocates for restaurants, hotels, catering and events, destination marketing organizations like Visit Philly, amusements, anything under the hospitality umbrella. We represent, we support, we give guidance and resources to. Zach, and I'm a longtime Philadelphia resident. Our office is in Harrisburg, but I've lived in the city for the past over 20 years.
Well, thanks, Ben, and thanks, Jonathan. Good evening, everybody. My name is Zach Pyzik. I am the Director of Government Affairs for the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association. I think Ben kind of covered it for the most part, but PRLA represents restaurants, hotels, and the entirety of the travel and tourism industries here in Pennsylvania. There are more than, I think, 26,000 restaurants, 1,500 hotels, and 100 travel and tourism partners that we represent. And the association, it's guided by our 11 very active chapters divided geographically throughout the state. Thank you, Jonathan, for facilitating this conversation tonight. Thank you, Jason, for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you both for being with us. Actually, the first time I got to meet Ben and learn about PRLA was over a phenomenal lunch at the one, the only Schlesinger's, which is a perfect segue to a special guest we have with us, Councilmember Allan Domb. Thank you for being with us, sir.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Jason, for organizing this. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Yes, thank you. And Councilman, to help set the scene a little bit, would you mind, you've been a phenomenal proponent of the dining bills, restoring faith and confidence back in the economy here in Philadelphia. Want to help set the scene a little bit about especially why you're joining us tonight?
Sure. Well, my first reason for joining, I wanted to know how your meal was at Schlesinger's.
There's no such thing as a bad meal at Schlesinger's. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's a good thing then. Okay. So
it was during the height, so there was no pickle bar. But besides that, it was.
That's true. I do have an IOU for a couple of pickles, but I'll claim later.
All right, sounds good. And listen, I want to thank you again for having this tonight. I also want to thank PRLA. I know Ben and Zach have been just amazing. It's almost going to be 2 years in March. Can you believe this? 2 years. And they've been such proponents of helping all of our businesses in Philadelphia in the hospitality. And they're really, they are the keys as to why we even have some of these bills that we're going to talk about tonight. I think it was back in, I'm losing track of time, maybe it was April or May. My chief of staff, Eryn Santamoor, decided that we should have a hospitality group and formed a hospitality group with Ben, Zach, many other restaurant people, hotel people. And the purpose of that group was to decide what can we do to help businesses survive in this crazy pandemic, because hospitality was getting crushed. Tech and law did really well, hospitality, not so well. And we came together as a group. Eryn coordinated several meetings on a monthly basis. And really the ideas of outdoor dining and how to do it came out of that group. The best ideas come from those who are in the actual business, and it came from PRLA and the restaurant people. We were just a conduit to make sure those ideas could become law. And that's what we tried to do. So I can't tell you how important dining is and restaurants are. I mean, you can buy anything you want over the internet, but you can't enjoy a meal with people over the internet. You just can't. And at the end of the day, since I'm looking on this call, I think I might be the oldest person here. I'm going to share with you that having fun every day is very important in our lives, and restaurants provide that fun. Think about it. That socialization with other people is absolutely crucial to how you feel about your life and how you feel about your friends and your family. It's the way you connect. You can't do that on the internet. I wish we were in person today. This is the second best way of doing it. But I can't say enough about restaurants. And think back, I go back in time. Remember when we went to restaurants, they had temperature gauges, remember that? And they were so careful and they were so cautious. They were really great. We didn't have any real issues. Restaurant people did an amazing job. So I could talk for hours about how good the restaurant people in our city are, but they're changing the landscape of Philadelphia. And when you think about the outdoor dining now, that's going to change the landscape and make Philadelphia, I think, the most fun city in the country, because we have tremendous restaurateurs here. We won how many James Beard Awards? One year we won almost all of them. It was amazing how many we won. We have just great restaurants here. We are, in my opinion, better food in Philly than in New York or any other city. I'll stop on that, Jonathan. So
no, you're absolutely right. We are undeniably a food capital and only going to continue to grow that way, especially as we keep investing in taking care of our hospitality industry. So you name dropped another phenomenal speaker that we have with us, someone who really does know the pulse of what community members need. Eryn Santamoor, your Chief of Staff. Eryn, welcome. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And these conversations are phenomenal at a high level, but to hear about the impact and what's needed most, we need to hear from people with the boots on the ground, trying to make it through in these tough times. So Qamara, can you hear us? I know you're in transit. I want to make sure you can hear.
Oh yeah, I can absolutely hear everybody. Thank you for having me.
Qamara Edwards, why don't you tell everyone about you and your business?
Sure. So I am the PRLA Philadelphia chapter as well, chapter president as well. But I am director of business and events for Sojourn Philly, which is a restaurant group here in Philadelphia. That is what actually pays me, even though my boss is amazing and lets me spend a lot of time working and volunteering with PRLA. But we have 4 restaurants in Philadelphia and 2 in Center City on the 1500 block of South Street, 1 on Washington Avenue and 1 in Kensington. We just recently opened Rex of the Royal at the 1500 block of South Street, and we have Jet Wine Garden across the street from that. Sorines, which was actually just voted best vegetarian Mexican restaurant in Philadelphia from Best of Philly, and that's in Kensington, and Cafe Nez at 20th and Washington and Point Breeze. And I am officially parked now, so I might be a little dark, but no more windshield wipers.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being with us. And a point of privilege to also say, in addition to Schlesinger's being a place we must all go, I don't know that I would have survived the pandemic without having that great outdoor space at Jet WineBar to get out and explore and actually conduct some in-person meetings with some people. And as Councilmember Domb said, just try to have a little fun, a little joy, even in the midst of dark times. Thank you all for being with us. To everyone else who's joined us on via Zoom, and of course, those watching later, we're thrilled to have you with us. This is, we've collected a series of questions that have come in the lead up to this event, but we also want to make sure we field anything that as the spirit moves you in the course of this conversation today. So feel free to drop it into the chat. I know Jason will do an incredible job making sure we don't miss a beat. He always does. But I think one of the first questions we have to ask is, there's a lot of new rules. Where are we today? And flat out, is it safe to eat inside in a restaurant in Philadelphia? Who wants to go first?
I'll answer that one.
Please do.
The answer to safe, yes. And there are new rules, but they're for everybody's safety, the rules.
Yes.
Hopefully in the next month or 2, we'll see them lifted. But I also want to mention, Jonathan, I mentioned it before. When you think about it, for many people who live in the city in an apartment building in a high rise, the only time they got a chance to take off their mask was sitting down outside of a restaurant during this pandemic. And when you think about that, it's pretty impactful that restaurateurs provided that benefit for the residents of our city. You couldn't take off a mask walking around. Remember that? You had to wear masks outside. You can only take it off when you were sitting down outside at a restaurant.
That's right. And you're right, it was a phenomenal service that was provided. Just seeing right here on 13th Street, for example, you felt like you were in Paris some days, just seeing the amount of people willing to be outside and just being together for a sense of community again. And we really do owe such a debt to these restaurateurs and bar owners. But to the question about, I think particularly to our PRLA friends, be great to hear someone in the community wants to go out to dine tonight after this great call. What do they need to bring? Where are we right now on what those precautions are, and what does someone need to know?
Sure, as we are right now, my puppy is squeaking over there. What you need to do right now is show proof of vaccination. So that is to be fully vaccinated. And that could be either in the form of your actual vaccination card or a photo of the card, or one of the many medical apps that people use, like the Clear app, for example. Here's the deal. In lieu of that, some restaurants, but not all, some hotels, but not all, could also allow a medical or religious exemption. And of course, you would have to show proof of that in a letter. So, it's always best to call to see, what restaurants are doing. Also on that exempt list would be children under 5 years and 3 months old. So if you were bringing young children out, you would want to make sure that the restaurant is allowing for exemptions.
Perfect.
And if I may, Jonathan, if I could chime in there real quick, on your original question, whether or not it's safe to dine out at restaurants, I would agree with Councilmember Domb. It is safe. It's absolutely safe. And I've heard some of our board members in Philadelphia, Qamara, I know Avram has said this a few times, and he's told the city directly, a restaurant might be one of the safest places to be right now, given the mandates that we've seen. I mean, it's much safer than my uncle's house. So I spent Christmas time at his house, and given how close the gatherings were, and they're not checking vaccine cards at social gatherings like that and whatnot. So I'd say it's very safe to dine out at restaurants right now. And like Ben mentioned, indoor restaurants, halls that serve food, caterers, movie theaters, cafes, even these larger establishments out there, like cafes within larger establishments like bowling alleys and movie theaters, casinos. These are places that are checking vaccine cards right now. And so for the most part, you could assure that folks are going to be vaccinated. In most places, they're wearing masks. And so, to answer that question, I definitely think it's safe to dine out at restaurants. But obviously, and I know many Philadelphians are cognizant of this, we're aware of the trends and the recent rise in cases that we've seen. But also lately, I think, the numbers have somewhat started to taper back a little bit, whatnot, as of recent. But nonetheless, to answer that question, I do think it's safe.
Good. And well, Qamara, I want to ask you to expound a little bit about that from your experience running an establishment and coordinating safety protocols and keeping both customers and your team safe. How's this experience been? What have you taken away from it?
So I've been stressing this for the last 2 years. I mean, there's not going to be an establishment that's going to be safer than a restaurant because we are held to a higher standard. We know that the only way that we are going to continue to be in business is by providing the safest environment possible, by keeping our staff safe, because if our staff's not safe, they can't come to work and we can't open our business without staff. So we are doing everything in our power to make sure that people are getting tested regularly. Ben and I were at Head House not even a couple of weeks ago, passing out at-home tests to all hospitality workers in the city of Philadelphia. We are making sure we received a $100,000 grant from the William Penn Foundation to make sure that we were testing and vaccinating people on the regular. We have been doing that basically since the onset of this even being available to industry workers. We sanitize on the regular because we are held to, not only the health department, but also licensing and inspection. No, I guarantee you, as Zach pointed out, his uncle is not going back behind Clorox wipes behind every single person that cleaned up their plate, for Thanksgiving dinner. But in a restaurant, they're going to do that. So you can't think of an establishment that's going to be safer than a restaurant. We want to make sure that you're enjoying your experience, but also can leave feeling like you were taken care of. I mean, it's literally in the name of what we do. We are hospitable at every turn.
Yes, you are, and that's fantastic. And you really have, I think people have really demonstrated that. And I'm curious about sort of the best practices that are coming out of this from COVID on a PRLA level, on a messaging level across the city. How are we making sure that some of the things that we want to keep after COVID stick around to keep safety and health and security strong?
Well, let me jump in there, and then Zach, you can finish up as you always do so eloquently. Listen, there was a lot of silver linings.
Mhm.
We received almost $1 billion in restaurant revitalization fund money to help restaurants in Pennsylvania. A lion's share of that went to our Philadelphia folks. Of course, 70% of the folks that did apply have still not received any funding, so we're still fighting for that. Hyper local, Councilman Domb really helped us get outdoor dining made permanent here in Philadelphia. These streeteries are going to continue to grow and to thrive all around, which is not something that we would have thought about 2 years ago, or probably would have happened. Zach worked with the third-party delivery companies like Uber Eats and DoorDash and Grubhub to put a cap on third-party delivery commissions, which is also going to help our restaurants survive. So those are just a couple quick things that we were able to accomplish, and will continue going forward. Zach?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I think you hit the nail on the head. And you said silver lining, and I think there has been somewhat of a silver lining to the pandemic for the hospitality industry. And we've been fortunate at PRLA to witness it from the front row. Whether it's at our chapter meetings, events like the Tourism Summit, and on all of our calls, we've been able to see businesses from all corners of the hospitality and tourism industries working together every day to improve the industry. They share information, they collaborate when possible, and we've seen the entire industry constantly lift each other up. And we've actually saw it firsthand earlier today in a call that Eryn and Councilmember Domb helped organize regarding the outdoor dining program in Philadelphia, and those calls have been terrific. If I may too, I want to comment on this because I worked in state government for 7 years prior to taking this job with PRLA, and what I could tell you is I've never seen not only so much transparency, but so much engagement from a legislator like I've seen from Councilmember Domb. The way they've pulled these working groups together, sometimes you get on these Zoom calls and Microsoft Teams calls and you're scrolling 4, 5, 6 pages deep of people from the industry who are contributing and all helping one another out. And that's, Councilmember Domb's efforts and Eryn's efforts regarding the outdoor dining program were huge for this industry. But to see them get the input and the engagement from the entire hospitality industry was really neat and incredible to see on the front lines. And so to kind of piggyback off of Ben's point, I would say I think there's been a silver lining to the pandemic on that point. And I think together the hospitality industry will come out of this with a new path forward in this new economy that we're seeing.
Well, Ben, Zach, Ben was right. You do give a great segue. Thank you. Which to Eryn and Councilmember Domb, I think there's a lot of excitement out there about one of these silver linings from the COVID experience, being that we may see some permanence or at least some stability in outdoor dining, seeing more opportunity for small businesses and restaurants to continue to grow in that respect. But it all seems a little confusing where we are right now. Could you tell us sort of the state of outdoor dining, assuming it wasn't a frigid winter day, but also where are we going and what can people look forward to? I think we're all excited to have things to look forward to as the chill thaws.
I'll give the overview and I'll let Eryn do the cleanup.
Excellent. I love a good team.
Yeah. We passed legislation. The original legislation we passed was 100% of the restaurants could apply for their licenses, or not passed, originally proposed. 100% of the restaurants could go through the administration for their applications for the licenses. And we really wanted it to be one mechanism, one system for wherever you were in the city of Philadelphia. That was fair, that was equitable, and that's how it should have been done. That's not how the legislation came out of the grinder, basically. It came out roughly that 65% of the restaurants could go through the administration and 35% or so have to go through their district council people. That was not our intention, but we didn't control those votes. In any event, we are going to work with the other district council people over time to see if we can include their districts to be administrative versus through councilmatic prerogative, basically. But I think, and that will happen. And the good news is that we have made this now permanent. You can't have outdoor dining in the actual streets that have cars, but they can be in the parking spaces. That's a game changer for the city. And in many ways, we've reimagined the city of Philadelphia. It is so much more exciting to eat outside in the city of Philadelphia than to eat outside in Malvern, okay? I'm just saying, this is a way for us to bring people back into Philadelphia, and people are loving it. And the other part of this we haven't talked about is, why was this so important? It was important for the restaurants, but think of how many residents of our city work in these restaurants. Their jobs, their lives depend on the jobs in these restaurants. That was crucial to make sure they had employment. And that was really the motivator for many of us to make sure all these great hospitality workers could get paid. Because, you know, in this pandemic, let's be realistic, 25% of our economy got crushed, and it was the hospitality industry. Technology and lawyers and real estate people, they did pretty well, but hospitality got really crushed. So I would say that's the overview, and I'll let Eryn give you the details.
So I'll be the technical person. I think so technically we're kind of in this weird holding pattern where restaurants who had licenses under the previous rules are waiting for this new application process to kick up. So right now, the administration is largely focusing on enforcing upon restaurants who were not really compliant before the pandemic, or I'm sorry, this past year before we passed the new legislation, and won't be therefore legal, we'll say, after they put together this new application. They're sort of leaving a lot of people to exist as they currently are until they put the new regulations out and create the application process through the business license system. That's probably coming out in February to officially be effective in March. So we should start to see some applications coming through in March on the system. For all those folks who are outside of the borders, like the councilman said, who have to go through the councilmatic prerogative ordinance process, which is really a shame. But for all of those restaurants, you know, it'll be important for all the restaurants to get community input from the resident associations, civic associations, business improvement district managers that are nearby can be helpful with that, and take that information to their district council member and go through the process. So that's where we are. I would also say, for anybody who's listening who hasn't worked in government, this was a monumental change for government. It feels so small as the customer for a restaurant, but giving up the use of the public right-of-way for anything but parking is a big deal. And I think this is the start of something really amazing. We've had this parklet seating idea in place for almost a decade, and you barely ever got to see parklets anywhere for people to sit and rest and enjoy. This is sort of just, this threw us into a great opportunity to think and reimagine our streets and our shared spaces. And, you know, now we get to have conversations. I spoke with Jason recently about pedestrianization of some of our blocks and how we could really create fun things for people to do in the city in ways that just, it wasn't even gonna, it was gonna be a non-starter before all this happened. So we're in a really good place.
We are, and thank you, both of you, because that's a perfect balance of technicality and also, I think, optimism for the future. That was perfect, and I know we'll be able to continue sharing these resources online with folks through PRLA and through social media to help make sure everyone can find this. But you raised a really great point that I think is worthy of everyone weighing in on, which is, you know, we are at sort of a shifting paradigm here for what life in the city can be, especially if outdoor seating is permanent, and what the future of sort of commercial corridors look like. And I'm curious, I want to actually start with you, Qamara, if we could, about how you experience this from a staffing and sort of community engagement piece. Having more people around inherently just makes city blocks safer. It drives foot traffic that not only helps your business, helps all the other businesses in the neighborhood, helps create potential investment in those neighborhoods. How has it been, real boots on the ground experience for you and your people in the various restaurants and bars?
I would say, you absolutely raised a good point. We only benefit from having more foot traffic. So things like more pedestrian traffic, better parking in the city, it's things that break down the impediments for the reasons why people don't come into the city. I always say that I don't expect to eat at my own restaurant 7 days a week. I don't expect others to. So therefore, the more people we have around, the more we can share, and it just helps and benefits everybody. I'm a big proponent of playing well in the sandbox with others. And I think, again, just going back to one of the silver linings of this pandemic is how strong this industry has become and how we all banded together and pulled our network together and said, you know what, guys, we're all in this together and we're going to come out of this together. And I think anything that we can do to encourage people to go out, whether that is having safer streeteries that are, brightly lit. I think what people have done in the city so far has been amazing. And those are the things that are going to keep people in the corridors. We're very lucky that we have two great neighborhood associations on South Street. We have our South Street West Business Association and our South of South Neighborhood Association, which have been instrumental in making sure that people know these businesses are still here. And this goes for the retail and restaurant businesses. Yes. We've partnered with our retail partners to do pop-up shops in our Jet Outdoor Garden to make sure that people know these retail businesses are here too. We've done sip-in shops where the retail partners have bought bottles of sparkling wine so people can go around with their, sparkling wine while they're shopping in the retail stores. I just love this sense of community, and let's help each other out and let's pull each other out and make sure we're all in this together and we're all surviving this.
That sounds incredible, although I'll have to double check my text to make sure where my invite for that sipping and shopping event was. But we'll come back to that. But Ben and Zach, actually, it's a great segue because we're talking about sort of collaboration, not only across the hospitality industry, but really city at large in making the economy stronger through these kinds of collaborations. I know we've talked about, you don't, how the correlation between hospitality and the arts, for example. You don't just see a show, you have a drink before, you have coffee after, you hopefully have dinner, you stay at a hotel if you can. How has sort of this ecosystem strengthened across COVID, and how is that going to impact how we reopen and re-enter sort of safely dining and shopping and spending and all of those things?
And I'm happy to start. And I guess what I would say is, right now we're seeing more unity than I think we've ever seen before, not just in the hospitality industry, but in the travel and tourism industries as well. There's a gentleman that we work with. He's a member of ours in Chester County. He's a former restaurant owner and operator. Recently, he's been very enthusiastic and engaged regarding increased DMO funding for our destination marketing organization, and increase in funding for tourism. And that's just one example of kind of the, one industry working with the other, because everybody knows that the impact is the same. I wanted to share some numbers that we recently got. The National Restaurant Association this week announced the 2022 State of the Industry report. As you can imagine, this remains kind of a year of uncertainty, but just some numbers that I wanted to share with the group. The food service industry workforce projected to grow by 400,000 jobs for a total industry employment of 14.9 million by the end of 2022. But that's still 500,000 fewer jobs than we saw in 2019 employment levels. 96% of operators that were surveyed said that they're experiencing supply delays and supply chain shortages, rising costs and raw materials. And then in terms of consumer behavior, I think it's 51%. 51% of adults say that they aren't eating out at restaurants as much as they'd like. And so, these numbers, while they kind of paint a scary picture, it's a constant reminder of how important right now that unity and that collaboration is. And Ben, I'll turn it over to you. I know you've kind of been a boots on the ground in terms of this stuff, and I know you talk to a lot of operators. Are you hearing the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we have, I saw Gretchen McHale on this call. She's with Live Nation. That's another part of our industry that was just absolutely clobbered. Our live events, our caterers. Hey, Gretchen, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
But to talk about collaboration, I remember, back in April, May of 2020, when all the restrictions were really hitting us, and I reached out to one of the caterers in the city. Gretchen, I reached out to Joe Volpe and said, listen, we have communications with the governor, because at that point we did. Up until July 15th of 2020, we were speaking with the governor and his team once a week to try to remember the red zone, or the red phase and the orange phase and the green phase. And, we were trying to get outdoor dining allowed. And, I'd reached out to Joe Volpe and said, listen, we're trying to form all these groups to try to safely reopen the industry. And Joe had no idea who I was, and who the PRLA was in general. I said, listen, we're your advocacy group. And, it went from 2 months later, the National Association of Catering Events would have a weekly call, and all of a sudden I was on that call once a week. And we really joined, it really strengthened our industry. Same with the hotel, same with the live event folks. And it's just amazing how everybody has come together. But, the hospitality industry is the second largest employer in the state of Pennsylvania. Second to, you'll never guess it, but farming. Farming is number one. Hospitality is number two in the state. And we, as soon as we started to get back open last year, a lot of the legislators and frankly, a lot of our guests said the restaurants are recovered. They're back to normal now. Not knowing that it is going to take years and years for this industry to recover. I'll try to wrap this up, but I'll tell you a quick story.
Please.
About when the Pope came to town 6 or 7 years ago. I was operating a few restaurants in Philadelphia. One of them was Spraga on Broad and Pine, and we were in the Pope zone. Remember the Pope zone where you couldn't drive, and me and Kevin made a decision to close that weekend, that Friday and Saturday night, just because the folks coming into town weren't necessarily into a 5-course fine dining meal. And, we decided to close that weekend. Well, at the end of the year, when we were doing our numbers, we were down. And, Kevin said, Ben, why are we down this year over last year? It seemed like we were pretty strong. And it all came back to that one single weekend. And, you take that weekend, you times it by all of March of 2020, April of 2020, limited dining in June of 2020, another closure, over the holidays. So these folks, just because you can't get a reservation at Zav, just because you see veg packed, does not mean that we're back in business. It's going to take years and years. So I know one of the questions was about support, right? This is why we need to continue to support these restaurants, why we need to keep going to see live events, why we, I guess bought tickets for Hadestown in a couple of weeks, why we should be continuing to, go to this Kimmel Center, why we should be doing our overnights at the hotels. It's just going to take a while.
A great point, and how dare you steal my next question? But actually, Gretchen, I'm so glad you're here with us. If you don't mind putting you on the spot for a second, I think your experience, particularly in that intersection of live events, dining, and entertainment and hospitality, is so valuable here. I think we'd love to hear also your experience with all of this, and I think to Ben and Zach's point about the collaboration across industries being something that we hope to see not only be permanent, but really continue to grow and expand for the next several years. How's all this been?
It's been really challenging, but it was super important and incredible to have people like Ben and the PRLA. I mean, I quite honestly, was not really part of PRLA before the pandemic. And then it became this situation where, I couldn't wait for the weekly updates, and, everything changed every 5 minutes, and you knew you could just text Ben and be like, can I do this? Is this legal? Is this okay today? And so that was incredible. And, it was, I'm an event salesperson, an event planner, and certainly had, like, none of us had any experience working through a pandemic. And, all of a sudden I'm a health consultant, and I'm a government affairs consultant, and, I'm a shoulder to cry on, and I'm a, accounting expert, and kind of all of these things. So, it is definitely not something that you can do on the internet. We're definitely not back to where we were, for sure. We're certainly in a better place. But I'm really hoping that we're almost out of this thing, and that that we can continue to figure out a way to partner with all of these different organizations, as well as to help make customers and clients feel like they're in a safe environment. Because that's definitely something that I personally still struggle with. I'm the one that's making all my friends eat outside in February. And, I'd rather do that than not eat out. And I'm going to the high-end restaurants, and I'm getting the takeout and doing all those kinds of things, because this is what makes our city what it is, and dining is just so important on so many levels, and being together in person is important on so many levels. And so anything that I can do to help with that, or any insight that I can give, always feel free to reach out. So thank you. Thanks for calling me out there.
Yeah, great perspective. Ben, I see your hands up. Yeah, you have a coda?
I do, and I'm private messaging with Frank here. And Frank's zooming in from Yard's Brewery down on Spring Gardens. And he's fortunate to have a good crowd down there, and it's too noisy for him to speak up. And he brought up a good point, and it goes back to safety. And yes, restaurants are safe. But, I'm just going to give you a caveat. We had a legislator reception in Harrisburg last Monday night. And it was very well attended. A lot of our state senators, a lot of our state reps gathered to talk to some of our members and to talk to us. And I invited all of them to Philly, because that's what I do. I say, hey, do you want to, I can get you 2 seats at Pyzik, or do you want to, seats at the bar at Vernick, or, I want them to come into the city. I'm so proud of this city, and I want to show it off. And I can also get good reservations, right? But they didn't want to come to the city, and it wasn't because of the vax mandate. It wasn't because the restaurants were unsafe. They thought the city was unsafe, and they were scared to come into the city because of all the violence they hear happening, because of the carjackings, because of all the shootings. And they were shocked that I lived in Center City, and I'm still walking and breathing, and that is definitely an issue. To quote Frank here, he appreciates our positivity, but I think there is an issue that is getting a lot of press and causing less people to come into the city. Is all the gun violence and carjackings. Are these being discussed enough? And I do think that is a great point, because, we can have fantastic restaurants. We can keep our guests safe in them, but that is an issue when it comes to tourism, when it comes to travel, and it comes to the sanctity and safety of our city that, that definitely needs to be addressed.
Well, it's
Allan, I know you're going to put your hand up. And as the only representative from the city here, I'm sorry that you are, well, you're center square on my screen, but
I was going to say, Ben, after all that, it's a shame we don't have somebody from an elected position in government to tell us what's happening on the inside. But oh wait, we have an expert. So, Councilmember, it is, I think, certainly in just conversations with neighbors throughout Center City, there's no more pressing issue. When people feel safe, they feel willing to go out and spend money and invest back in the city and tell, to Ben's point, tell friends and neighbors outside the city, come on in, the water's fine. So how are we addressing that? And I think, obviously has such a direct impact on our hospitality folks and the workers, because they're always going to be the first ones impacted by any kind of turndown.
Well, let me just say this, that the council authorized 155 million in gun violence prevention and programs to try to get this under control. Keep in mind, and Ben, you better tell these lawmakers in Harrisburg, that 90% of the serious crime is occurring in 9 zip codes in the city. And they're not at Pyzik, okay? And they're not at Vernick or these other restaurants. Unfortunately, they're in other areas, which is sad. They're in neighborhoods of our city, all over the city. But 9 zip codes have about 90% of the serious crime. We still need to get that under control. We've invested in GVI, which is the group violence intervention. We've invested in other types of programs. We're investing in everything we can to get this under control. I will say that I've been in touch with all law enforcement agencies, from the DA's office to the US Attorney to the Attorney General to FBI to ATF and to the police commissioner. They're all trying their best and working together to get this under control. And I do think we're going to see some positive results over the next few months. There is a carjacking detail. You might have noticed on Monday night, I think it was, there was a carjacking that occurred that was captured by a helicopter. Mm-hmm. And so there is a detail. We are trying to work with the state police to have them come into the city to help us. We do need help. We need to hire more police officers. We have a shortage of police officers. If you know anyone who's interested, have them apply. We need people to join the police force. But I do think in general, we're getting this under control, and it's not easy. Every city, major city, has these issues. That's not making an excuse for it, because I will say that it is by far the #1 issue. It's not taxes, it's not schools, it's, do I feel safe living in the city of Philadelphia or coming into the city of Philadelphia? And so we need to get this under control. We need to get the media out that it is safe for people. And look, where I live, I can tell you that 3 or 4 weeks ago, there were 2 consecutively, 1 o'clock in the afternoon at 18th and Locust, a couple was held up with a gun, and the next night at 7 o'clock at night, held up with a gun. But those people were captured, and they're in jail right now. They committed 12 or 14 of these types of crimes, and they're under control right now. So I do think we're getting to the other side of this, and I'm hopeful we're going to get this under control. And I do think that group violence intervention is a big part of getting this under control. That's a great program we need to invest more in. And I think all of our law enforcement people are on board. I've met with them all, and we have really good law enforcement people. They're really good. You don't get to see them because that's not news that they're doing a good job. The media only wants to report the horrific things. But we have some really, I can tell you, really good people in law enforcement. Let me mention something else, Jonathan. You're talking about restaurants. I will say that from what I've seen, January for many restaurants is a disastrous month. It's been very, very challenging for January, very challenging. This variant crushed a lot of places. And I hope we get out of this variant soon, or we get some sort of aid from federal government or state government, but I didn't notice I didn't say city government. But we need help for the restaurants. And I hope this variant rebounds quickly because they got crushed. The other piece I will tell you though is restaurants in general. When you look at 52nd and Market, Broad and Erie, or you go anywhere in the Northeast or in the Northwest, your restaurants have become the anchor of these neighborhoods.
Yes.
They go to a restaurant and then they go out and buy and shop in the retail. The restaurant is the anchor. It's very important. If you're a real estate developer, you want a really good restaurant in your stores there because you want to be able to attract people to come to shop at all the other stores. So I'm using 52nd and Market as an example, but it's all over the city. It's in South Philly, Northwest, Northeast, everywhere. The restaurant is now the anchor because look, people can buy things over the internet.
Right.
And by the way, we are working on something else I will share with you. And Ben, maybe you can help me with the state legislators. There is a loophole right now when you buy items, and Jonathan, maybe you'll be able to work on this. When you buy items over the internet, the city of Philadelphia is not collecting the 2% sales tax that it's due. So they pay 6 versus 8, which is unfair to your stores. If we can close that loophole, it's $22 million a year to the city of Philadelphia.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely right.
That's something, Jonathan, for you to bite into.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
No pun
I
intended.
was gonna piggyback on this and say, since January has been, you absolutely correct, has been one of the worst months in recent history. I have actually never been more grateful of Valentine's Day falling on a Monday in my life. I'm so happy Valentine's Day is on a Monday, because that is the day we are all circling on our calendars in the restaurant industry.
I love that. Well, and that, Qamara, that brings up a great point. One of the questions that was sent in is there are still some people, for myriad reasons, might still be a little hesitant fully going back out, but want to help their neighbors do better, particularly our hospitality business. How can they, beyond, of course, we could all order and still take care of our delivery workers, but I think there's also questions about, are there still restaurant recovery funds? Are there ways to, take care of some of our, the workers in the neighborhoods? And to your point, are there, could we all be using social media better to promote that? Go out and spend Valentine's Day at a local restaurant on a Monday.
Yeah. So I'll actually mention 2 things that actually doesn't get mentioned enough.
Please.
One, I would say purchase gift cards. Gift cards are a good way to give cash flow to restaurants now. You can redeem them later when you do feel safer about going out, or over the summer when you want to be outside when it is warmer. Purchase gift cards. Gift cards are an amazing way to support restaurants. I would also point out PRLA did start the Hospitality Assistance Relief Program. And if you are looking to give support to hospitality workers, it is a great opportunity for you to donate to this fund. And this money goes directly into the hands of the service and hospitality workers when they do, if they're caught in a fire, car accident, need additional assistance while they can't work. This money goes directly to them. So this is an amazing way to help service industry workers and make sure they can support themselves if something does arise, because we all know outside this pandemic, life just happens.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you raised such a good point, especially too in a city like Philadelphia, where our diverse business owners are really our lifeblood here. There's also some dedicated funds. I know, for example, Urban League has a great fund specific to Black-owned restaurants. I know the National LGBT Chamber is working with Grubhub on LGBT-owned and related restaurants. So I think also there's ways to give back that are community specific as well. So I think we can all do our part. I really appreciate you raising that. Jason, I think you said there was a question from one of our guests here, I believe.
Yes. And that question came in from Clay and James from Philadelphia, PA. They say, we recently went on vacation and saw restaurants with hand sanitizer on each table next to the salt and pepper shaker. Has the PRLA or the city of Philadelphia thought about or encouraged restaurants to add more hand sanitizer or one per table?
Oh, I can answer that question. So we actually, all of our establishments have hand sanitizer on the host stand and at all of the individual tables. For our outdoor dining restaurants, especially as well. I think a lot of the restaurants, and I think someone mentioned this earlier on the call, they're like these tall, they almost look like robotic hand sanitizing machines as soon as you walk in. I kind of liken it to cruise ships where they're always like washy, like there's hand sanitizers at the front of every single entrance and door. I think that just goes back to sparking more of an illustration of the fact that restaurants are absolutely doing everything in their power to have safety measures at every turn. I know that there are a ton of restaurants that have hand sanitizer available. I know Grubhub even was dropping off the individual travel bottles for all the restaurants to even put in like bags for people too. So, I mean, I think that is one of the things that we've done a really, really good job of in Philly. And if you haven't gone to a restaurant if you've gone to a restaurant in Philly that doesn't have it, let Ben and I know, and we will drop off hand sanitizer there.
Well done. That's fantastic. And thanks, Clay and James, for that question, and welcome back. Your vacation, according to social media, was fantastic. We want a full debrief. But as we come to a close here, and it's amazing how fast this went, because there's so much to talk about making sure we're getting people the information they need and back up on their feet to help our restaurants and bars and hotels get back on their feet. One of the last questions that we were asked over the intake form was, where are the to-go drinks, and when are they coming back, and how quickly can we start enjoying those in the park again? Ben, Zach, do you have an update?
I was going to say, I'm going to let Ben and Zach handle that one.
Hey, listen. If you'd asked us last Sunday, we would have said, we would have put our tail between our legs and and just kicked the dirt around. And then I was talking about the legislator reception last week, and somebody on this call, Qamara, got in the face of pretty much every legislator there, and Zach's update for you probably has a lot to do with Qamara being everybody's face. So Zach, take it away.
Yeah, well, we definitely, I think we're in a different position 2-3 weeks ago. Had you asked me that question, I would have said, there was a lot of uncertainty around it. I don't know. I don't think it's worth necessarily getting into the weeds of all of it, but there were a lot of just, political things that happened in Harrisburg when the to-go cocktails legislation was on the move. And anyway, it ended up not working out, but the conversation has kind of been revived. And yes, that has a lot to do with Qamara's efforts and engagement on this issue. And I know she had a lot of conversations last week with legislators. Ben's been pretty active, and other members have as well. Recently, PRLA testified at a hearing in front of the Senate Committee on Community, Economic, and Recreational Development. And at that hearing, we were talking about small business relief packages, potentially an expansion of something like the CHIRP program or other small business loan programs. And one of the senators at the hearing, Senator Laughlin, asked us about to-go cocktails. And he asked us, would this help the industry? And fortunately, PRLA board member Jen Furtenball, who owns and operates Level 2 and Cafe Fresco in Harrisburg, she was at my side and she was able to answer that question from an operator's perspective. And she said, of course, to-go cocktails would help, right? It's another option for takeout dining. And so that conversation and the conversations of our members and Qamara and Ben and whatnot have led to Senator Laughlin and Senator John Udicek just this week announcing that they plan to introduce legislation addressing to-go cocktails here in Pennsylvania. And so technically there is still House Bill 1154, which I believe was Representative Massa's bill, which would address the issue, but there's other legislation in the works also. I don't think Senator Udicek and Senator Laughlin's bills have been filed yet with the Senate Secretary, but I think we could expect them shortly. And look, this is something Pennsylvanians support. It's something the media likes discussing, and I think our chances are looking fairly good. We're going to continue to push for it. We might even work on a call to action campaign sometime soon. But yeah, I think that conversation is very much alive. And thank you, Qamara, for your help reigniting that discussion.
I want to just add, since Jonathan asked what can community members do to offer their support for restaurants, I think one of the things that's become so apparent during this pandemic is obviously as business owners, we can say, yes, these 5 things will help us, but we need residents to also write letters to their local Congress people, write letters to state senators, write letters to the House of Representatives and say, you know what I really like? I really like to-go cocktails because as a consumer, this is what I want. You know what? I really like outdoor dining because I want to feel safe and feel like I want to enjoy the weather when it's nice outside. These are the things that will also help because obviously, legislative members know that business owners support this. We want this because it helps our business, but we need residents to say, these are the things that make my experience in the city better. And these are the things that make my entertainment and my enjoyment better. I want to-go cocktails. That's a huge push in the right direction.
Well said. And it's 6:30 somewhere. So I think after this call, we all deserve one. But that's a perfect note. Qamara, thank you for that. I want to give all of our speakers a second to give a closing thought or any other takeaways. I saw there was some great information dropped in the chat, and we'll make sure that that's included in the wrap out information for folks. But let's start. Eryn, Councilmember Domb. As we wrap up here, first of all, thanks for all your advocacy to help protect and take care of our restaurants and our hospitality industry. How would you like to end tonight? What would you like to leave us with?
Well, I'll just say that Jonathan and Jason, thanks for organizing this, number one. Ben and Zach, thanks for everything you've done, and Qamara, thank you for what you're doing. Also, great work on your end. And it's really a team effort. You know, together everyone achieves more. This is a team effort. And I agree with Qamara, by the way, about residents, getting them involved. But I will say this: at the end of the day, restaurants are really the key to our economy in Philadelphia. They really are. We can have great industry, we can have great tech, great life sciences, but at the end of the day, when you want to have fun, it's the restaurants that are providing it. I'll end on that one. And every one of us tonight should go out to a restaurant and have fun.
And I would just tag on that and say, you know, if you like the way we did outdoor dining, if you like that experience in the city, if you want to see more of it, you have to fill up those seats. And it's really important to support the restaurants, but to support the program. If you like the livelihood of the city, when you see folks out and you like twinkle lights up at nighttime and you like the look and feel of that, then you have to support it, because otherwise you give fuel to the council members, to the legislators, to the elected officials who want to say, no, I want control back of our streets. So if you like how this is going, support it, and we can grow it, and we'll have more advocacy that we can do internally with other members to keep it going and make it a citywide program that's successful for everyone.
Perfectly said. We all have a role to play. Qamara, thanks. I'll see you. Thanks for helping me make my Valentine's Day plans. I know where I'll be. Although Frank, pour me a filthy. It's my favorite. I'll see you shortly for one. Ben and Zach, from the PRLA perspective, I think exactly what was said about making sure that we're all doing our part to be vocal, letting the community know how they can be involved, how our legislators can impact change. Anything you'd like to leave us with?
I would just say thank you for organizing this, Jonathan and Jason, and for inviting PRLA to participate. And again, I want to thank Councilman Domb and Eryn. You know, I know this relationship with PRLA predates me. I just started with the association about 9 or 10 months ago. But since the day I started, they have gone above and beyond, not just to help the industry when it matters, but to do the little things too, to keep us informed, you know, phone calls, letting us know things are on the move, things have been introduced, helping us publicize information in their newsletter and sharing information that we could put in our updates. And I just, you know, when we talk about collaboration, when we talk about unity, it's so important, but it's also, it's productive and it's effective, you know, and it leads to a better result. And I can't thank them enough for their engagement on, you know, helping the industry and working with PRLA, and Qamara and everybody else on the call, our members, you know, Frank, Clay, James, thank you all for being here, and for being involved in these conversations, because, you know, I'm not an operator. I don't work at a restaurant anymore. I spent about 7 or 8 years in the industry, but we get our marching orders from all of you. And knowing how the industry is impacted and what matters most is so important. And so these conversations are great. Really happy to be here. And thank you.
Ben, last word, my friend.
Yeah, I guess I had to repeat what Zach said. You know, we're really lucky to have Allan Domb have our back, and we're really lucky that Eryn does all the heavy lifting there. And you know, just a few weeks ago, the city of Pittsburgh reached out to us and said we also want to make outdoor dining permanent in the city of Pittsburgh. And they said, can you send us the bill? And I said, this bill? They said, no, the good one that Councilman Domb wrote. So that's what they're going with. And you know, it's trickling throughout the entire state. Same with the third-party delivery cap. It's going to be taken up by Pittsburgh as well. So you know, what happens in Philly spreads across the state and across the country. We have such a strong, robust hospitality industry here, and as Allan said in the beginning of the call, we really are a world-class restaurant city. We're a lot better. We have to work a lot harder than New York does to put great restaurants out there, and it shows. So just keep supporting the restaurants. I dropped my information in the chat. If you're watching this recorded, you can reach out to me at Ben, B-E-N, at PRLA.org. I'm very responsive, and I can help anybody out.
Well, we appreciate that, and I'll thank you all for I was going to say your testimony, for your for your great words of inspiration, and for your wisdom that you shared about how we can take care of each other here in the city. It is a family effort, and I know we will all do our part to help our bars, restaurants, hospitality industry, friends and neighbors succeed. A big special thank you to Jason, who has done such hard, real work and made real progress and gotten real results for his neighbors and friends throughout Philadelphia, and asked for nothing in return. So thanks, Jason, for taking care of so many, particularly in the neighborhood, folks who really didn't know where to go. And everyone on this call has been so helpful in that respect. So wishing each of you a very safe, healthy rest of your week. To everyone who's watching us on a recording, please do follow up with us for any information that we can share with you. And remember to go out and spend and take good care of your local restaurants. We need you. So good night and thank you all.